Good morning, everybody, and I welcome all councillors and members of the public to the latest meeting of North Northamptonshire's Executive, including those watching the meeting via the live stream on YouTube. Members are reminded to keep your microphones muted unless invited to speak. If you could also ensure that your phones and your laptops are on silent. Thank you. Again, I find myself doing this far too often for my likings. However, as some of you may be aware, we've had a death within the North Northamptonshire family of councillors, and that was sadly Councillor David Jenny, who passed away on Boxing Day. So I would like to invite members and officers and members of the public to stand and observe a 2-minute silence. Thank you. Thank you very much. So we move on to the agenda of the day. So item 1, apologies for absences. Are there any apologies for absence?
There are none, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2, members' declarations of interest. Members, are there any declarations of interest in the items before you today? No. Okay. So item 6, public health and NHSE integrated sexual health and HIV services. I confirm that the item has been withdrawn from the agenda today and will be tabled at the next executive meeting, which is to be held on the 16th of February. Item 3, notifications of requests to address the meeting. I have received the following requests on item 4 from Councillor John McGee, William Colquhoun, Lynn Buckingham and Jean Addison. Item 5, John McGee and Jean Addison. Item 7, Anne Lee and Jean Addison. Item 8, Councillor Anne Lee. Item 10, Councillor Lynn Buckingham. And item 11, Councillor Anne Lee. Just want to check if there's been any other requests that have been received before.
No requests, but I've had an email from Councillor McGee this morning to say that he is watching online, so he's unlikely to join us.
Okay, I'm not sure he's able to talk online, is he? He's not, no. No, okay, well. So we move on to item 4, the performance indicator report for 2022-23 as of period 8, and I would like to invite Councillor William Colquhoun to address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair, Executive. I'm presenting this, or I'm asking this question on behalf of a colleague, Chair, and I don't have hard copies, so I hope I've got this right. I think I'm referring to page 14. And it's regarding the number of complaints dealt with within SLA. We believe it's very low. It's 71% for November and 54% for October. We're curious as to what action is being taken to improve the percentage of complaints within SLA. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm sure the executive member will wrap that up in their briefing for you. I'd now like to invite Councillor Jean Addison to speak and address the meeting.
Thank you, Chair, and a Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you. Page 12, the Freedom of Information requests numbers fallen again. The remarks say it's noted performance has fallen below target, but extra resources have been put in place. It's said that last month the situation got worse, not better. What extra resources are being put in place? Moving on to page 23, BBF16, rate of suspensions in secondary school pupils. It's risen dramatically over a month to 100 in a month. Is there a specific problem or a specific school? What is being done to ensure that these 422 young people get an education while suspended? Page 33, sickness and absence. Adult services seem to have a consistent rise in both sickness and absence. What is being done to identify the problem and give support where needed? This is seen elsewhere, leads to a huge amount of money being spent on agency staff, as shown elsewhere in this report. Surely a targeted project, especially in adult social care, is needed to support staff and bring sickness and absence down and to decrease the huge spend on agency staff. That's the next one, sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Addison. I don't know if any of the members wanted to come back in the wrap-up session to answer any of the questions. If not, we will get the answers to you via email. Okay, so I'd now like to invite Councillor Lynn Buckingham to address the meeting. Councillor Buckingham, you have a maximum of 3 minutes.
Good morning and thank you. Just wanted to say congratulations for the housing KPIs that are now within the report. And it gives a much fuller picture of our housing sector. But we can also see that the amount of pressure that's being put on staff because of the housing crisis, which continues to affect not just this council, but most councils, but an acknowledgement that staff members are working really hard to make sure that our targets are met as soon as possible. Still a couple of things that are need to be looked at further. Voids are still taking far too long at 90 plus days, which also has an impact on our being able to house new tenants. The repairs, the high numbers of emergency repairs that are being done as opposed to non-emergency is almost 50-50 on the last month of the report, and feel that needs to come down a bit, because emergency repairs obviously cost a lot more than non-emergency repairs. But overall, thankful that we've got the KPIs. Really, really well done. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Buckingham, thank you very much. And thank you for acknowledging the KPIs are moving in the right direction for you. But however, I would just like to say there's not a housing crisis in North Northamptonshire. There is a challenging situation which all councils are ongoing, but it's not a housing crisis. But thank you. So I'd like to invite Councillor Lloyd Bundy, Executive Member Finance Transformation, to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. In response to the comments, I think councillors around this room might want to respond personally to the various comments made. They may do that during this meeting, or they may do it by email afterwards. As far as the extra resources for FOIs goes, I acknowledged that to Councillor McGee, and I believe that's probably Councillor McGee's question, but sadly he can't be with us today. Bearing in mind that he asked the same question at the last executive, and there's been less than 8 working days between the two, I did actually point out to him that I would get that information back to him as soon as possible. Hopefully other members will respond to your queries. I'd like to start this report by actually welcoming Rob Atkins to Northants. He's our interim head of performance, intelligence and partnerships, and he'll be with us until Tom Barden is appointed, and I think that's going to be a full-time post at the end of March. I'd like to bet that Rob's online, so he's probably looking at us now, but he's not in the room. As far as looking at the report itself goes, I'd like to thank Councillor Binley for pointing out the error in AFL 17, the total number of households in temporary accommodation. The figure is 207, not 210, which is a little bit closer to the 200. Thank you very much, Councillor Binley. I'm glad somebody else reads the report. I'm pleased to report that data breaches have further reduced. As you know, I brought that up at the last meeting, but as far as I'm concerned, any data breach is too many, so I think we should be careful not to be too complacent. A few other things. The improvement in the number of births registered within 42 days is currently at 98%, which basically means that Northants Council remains second in the region overall. It should be noted as well that birth registration figures reflect a national trend which appears to be on the increase, which is quite interesting. The number of phone calls answered by customer services has seen a reduction down from 88.02% in October to 86.33% in November. Customer services are training a number of new staff, and it's anticipated that these will soon filter through to the service performance. Although any reduction in performance is a disappointing thing to see, I think it should be noted that our customer service department answer in excess of, or around about 30,000 calls a month. And that's a massive task. And I think we should actually acknowledge our customer service department and the good work that they do. And answering that amount of calls is pretty impressive. Also, it's good to see that the number of complaints upheld against the council has reduced significantly. In November, only 2 out of the 76 complaints were upheld, which is very low. But the council is keen to act on complaints efficiently, and we are keen to get things right first time so that there aren't complaints. And where there are complaints, we should be holding our hands up, apologise and learn from that wrong and put it right. With that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bundy. I'd like to invite members for any contributions that would like to come in. Councillor Binley.
Thank you, Chair. Just to save another email flying about, I thought I'd answer the questions posed towards my portfolio. So first of all, the KPIs raised by Councillor Buckingham. Thank you very much for your welcome comments. Of course, the only new KPI that we've added within the housing area is STP 38, which is with regards to rents collected. You talked about the repairs, the number of emergency repairs. Yes, the number of emergency repairs are higher, and we do tend to see this at certain times of year. I'm sure we're all well aware of the cold weather that we've had, and I think from looking out the window, the wet weather that we've had. So it is very indicative of the environment and acts of God. So we have seen, as per the member's note that went out last month from myself, about the cold weather and the frozen condensing pipes out of boilers. We were not the only housing provider to suffer from that. There were notifications that went out from people neighbouring local authorities, as well as people like Great Well Homes, who also had to send out the same because they suffered with similar problems. Of course, the increase is within what we would expect to see, because you've got the rain, which of course brings out the leaks in areas, it forces issues with guttering, and also the wind is another thing that affects things. So for example, I think we had quite a bit of wind last night, so I'm sure the team are going to be getting a lot of phone calls about fence panels having gone down. The other areas with regards to voids, if you look at the actual notes contained within the report under voids, it does clearly state that one of the things that the team are now doing is they are actually carrying out weekly voids meetings. And so, again, part of the work has been harmonise those areas in the fact that the way that Corby and Kettering were previously reporting them were very, very different. Major voids were not being reported in Corby. And actually, one of the reasons that we saw such a big increase the other month in Corby is because they were not being recorded correctly. So the team have actually made sure that those voids are now actually recorded correctly and not, let's just say, pushed to one side, which is what had happened before. So we're actually now getting the true picture of what's happening there. That's why we're seeing those. I'd also hasten to add that I've heard nightmare stories under the previous sovereign authorities as to when Corby previously had 500 plus voids. We're not in that position, and of course we'll do everything to make sure that that doesn't happen, and I thank Councillor Buckingham for raising that to make sure that we don't end up getting in that kind of a position and we keep it on the radar, and that's absolutely right, that we make sure that we keep looking at that. And we are, and we have got focus on that. And as we know, we're hopefully going to go through and get the budget through, which of course is one of the areas that we'll be addressing, is repairs, and voids will address that issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bindley. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. And Councillor Addison, thank you very much for raising that point. You're absolutely right. It is a high statistic, and we are working... Are you listening? No. No. Okay, so we are working with the schools to encourage that statistic. But of course, I know and you know that the best place for these children is in a school, but not at the detriment of other children's education or indeed the health and safety of staff that work within the schools. I can send you a breakdown of what schools have what, and I will do that, and I'll do that after this meeting. But we are working with those schools that have a higher percentage than perhaps others do.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Addison, again for your questions around staff vacancies and use of agency staff. It's something that we manage all year round, obviously. Winter tends to be a difficult time as our staff come in contact with so many people and go down with the various winter viruses that are out and about, and they seem to... So, we have a problem every year in terms of those kinds of sicknesses, but we continually monitor staff absences, and we're doing all we can to reduce the amount of agency staff that we use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. Okay, if I could go back to Councillor Bunday just to wrap up, and if you wanted to move the report as well.
I don't think there's much more that I can add. Thank you very much to colleagues around the table. It's nice to know that all of the executive are alive to the KPIs and the KPIs in their areas. So I'm happy to move the report, the recommendation at paragraph 3, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bunday. I'm looking for a seconder for that report. Councillor Brackenbury seconds the report. Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 6 of the agenda pack and have been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 5, Director of Public Health Annual Report 2020 to 22. Obviously, Councillor McGee is not here today, so he's unable to address the meeting as per his request. So I would like to ask Councillor Addison to address the meeting, please.
Thank you again, Chair. Public Health Annual Report. Firstly, I'd like to say I'm surprised that the Interim Director for nearly the last year does not seem to be mentioned. The report mainly talks about the pandemic and lessons we have took from that. During that very difficult time, we've had lots of volunteers helping across Northants in many different ways. Can I ask what has been done, as suggested by the Executive Member and Director during these difficult times, to try and harness the great work from volunteers and to keep up the momentum going on? And, you know, we're very, very grateful for the work that the volunteers did during that time. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Addison. And it goes without saying, this executive and the council as a whole is obviously always indebted to the volunteers within this county for everything they do to help our services and help the residents of Northamptonshire. So that goes without saying, but it's good to have it acknowledged. And I just wanted to touch, obviously, John Ashton, our Interim Director of Public Health, is not here today because this report actually is the previous Director of Public Health's responsibility, but point noted. So I would now like to go to Councillor Harrison to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for your comments, Councillor Addison. I absolutely agree with you about the harnessing of volunteers and the system working together as a whole. And just to expand on what the leader has just said, the reason our Interim Director of Public Health is not mentioned in this report is because this report goes up to the end of March and he was appointed in April. So he doesn't feature in this report because it's not his report. It gives me a lot of pleasure to present the report. This was first presented to the Health and Wellbeing Board back in July, so it's a little while since I first sort of had a really good read through this and spent time really understanding all the elements that came together in tackling the pandemic. And it's an unusual report because it actually covers a period of 2 years rather than just one. There would an annual report, as you can probably work out, would normally be a report every year. The pandemic was a very specific time, and I think you can imagine when we're in the middle of a pandemic, trying to produce a report halfway through was not going to be a good use of resources and time. So it was agreed by the Health and Wellbeing Board that a 2-year report would be more appropriate. And I think it makes, I hope you agree, it makes really interesting reading when you look at all the different things that came together, all the different organisations, all the working together, the breaking down of barriers that had previously existed between organisations that meant that we, as Northamptonshire as a whole, including, as Councillor Addison mentioned, our voluntary sector and members of the public stepping up to do their bit. It's really quite an amazing piece of work, and reading through it again over the last couple of days to refresh my memory of exactly what was in the report, it actually, it made me quite emotional remembering that time and just how difficult it was and just how much took place. And I think it's not surprising that the conclusions that have come out of this report in terms of looking ahead and where we need to go focus on, one, us continuing that cross-organisational and cross-community working and making sure we keep those barriers down and prevent those barriers going back up so that we're able to be responsive and resilient to everything that comes in the future. And even in terms of dealing with business as usual, we can do that better if we work together. And the other thing that was very marked that came out of the pandemic was just how much it highlighted health inequalities across Northamptonshire and across the country as well. And so that has, made us take on with renewed vigour, looking at those health inequalities and tackling those. And I hope very much that when we present the next Director of Public Health annual report, we'll see progress on those fronts. I think the integrated care system, which is maturing around us as we speak, will be an integral part of that. And in particular, locally, our community wellbeing forums and our local area partnerships. That's very much where some of these deep-seated inequalities will be tackled. So I'm really pleased to present this report. I hope you've all found it interesting reading, if a bit of a blast from the past and reminding us of those very difficult times that we've come through. And just to say that we're recommended to note the contents of this report and to note the progress that's made on the previous year's recommendations. So I'm happy to take any questions before we go on.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrison. So, members, do we have any comments to make in relate to the report? Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. No, and I'd just like to echo it is indeed a blast from the past. It's actually made really quite sobering reading because it sort of brings back that pandemic, which thank goodness has faded perhaps into memory a little bit, but it brings back some of the challenges that the health world had to face right across Northamptonshire and indeed the world, essentially. But it shows the importance of the multi-agency approach right across various departments, various areas. It was by no means just health. I mean, environmental health and regulatory services were heavily involved. It's already been commented upon of really brilliant work done by volunteers. So I just commend that spirit of cooperation and working together to get the outcomes that we wanted to get as well as we could. It really is something that could perhaps show lessons for other areas of business, that we can work together across agencies, across directorates, across departments, and engaging our community to come in and help. So there's quite a lot of meat in this, and it's been, as you say, an interesting blast in the past and very interesting reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brackenbury. Any other comments, members? Nope, so I go to you, Councillor Harrison, just to wrap up there briefly.
Thank you. I will go to the recommendations at 3.1 and I am happy to move those recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Howe. Thank you very much. So the recommendations are set out on page 38 of your agenda packs and they've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Great stuff, thank you. Okay, so item 6, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, has been withdrawn. So we progress on to item 7, Northamptonshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership Annual Report 21-22. So I'd like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting.
Thank you very much, Chair. It's a very interesting report, a lot of information, thank you. On page 115 are interesting figures. It allows us to calculate how many children and young people there are in Northamptonshire. Or in Northamptonshire, sorry, West and North, 187,000. And it means then that lower on the page, when 43,393 contacts were made in children's social care, that's 23% of all the children and young people. Then we see the number of referrals, nearly 13,000. Of those, 9,000 were assessed. I just wonder, where's the shortfall? Why were the others not assessed? And also, what happens after the first assessment? How long does it take before children who need follow-up care receive care, especially in terms of mental health? Because I have spoken before at this meeting that there is a huge shortfall, a huge backlog in mental health support for children. Head teachers of schools will testify to that. There is a mention of mental health in this report, but only in terms of Rainsbrook Secure Training Centre and the St Andrews, which are all residential places for a different type of, for the acute form of mental health. So why is there that waiting list? What about the other children? Then the second and last point, on page 123, we see that the number of children missing from education decreased by 21 to an average of 253 children missing in the last 3 months. I assume that this is not children missing one day from school without authorization. So I'd like to have some more insight. How come these children are missing? Are these children in care? Or are these parents keeping the children home as carers? Or are they children from traveling communities? Or children who've been taken abroad by their parents? Or whose parents moved without informing the authority? Do we inform the police at some point about this? How much do we know about these families? Our work must be progressing because the number has declined. But can we, as councillors, please have an insight into the number of these children missing? Because it sounds very concerning to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Councillor Addison, if you'd like to come and address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question links in with Councillor Lee's. It's regarding children with extra needs. How many of them are still waiting for assessment and school placement within the last 2 years? And what is being put in place to ensure that every child's educational needs are being met? If these children are being home educated, what safeguarding procedures are in place to ensure that they are receiving the education and are safeguarded whilst they're at home?
Thank you very much, Councillor Addison. So I'd now like to invite Councillor Scott Edwards to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Lee, just to address some of the comments you made, the number of contacts, of course, some of those contacts can be about the same child. So statistically, that percentage is not about the entire population of Northamptonshire. You could have 10 referrals for one child from different people that are referring through. So that statistic isn't quite as you say it is. The children missing, Ofsted recently actually commented really positively about the children missing programme that we have, but we're quite happy to come back to you with any other information that you need on that, as well as Councillor Addison, sorry, I keep saying your name wrong. The home education, absolutely safeguarding is paramount with those in home education. And again, we'll come back to you with all the information on that. And in fact, what we might do is at the EAP is do a segment on this that you can come along and all the other councillors are aware of it as well. Thank you. So, Northamptonshire Council is one of the 5 strategic leads representing the multi-agency Northamptonshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership, which is a statutory requirement of working together to safeguard children from 2018. The partnership is required to produce an annual report that provides an overview of the partnership's achievements against the business plan. And the purpose of the partnership is to safeguard and promote the welfare of children in Northamptonshire. This is done by coordinating the work of those people and all organisations working in the county, ensuring that what we do is effective. This report provides assurance to members of the activities undertaken by the partnership and its agencies to safeguard children and young people across the county during the reported period. And I'm pleased to say that this report is really good and it is really informative and has a lot of information, so a lot of work has gone into this. The 5 strategic lead partners are North Northamptonshire Council, West Northamptonshire Council, the Northamptonshire Children's Trust and the Northamptonshire Police and Integrated Care Board. There are 3 priorities set, which are taking positive action early enough to protect children, to support children, young people and families at risk of exploitation, and to work effectively as a partnership and support our staff. The partnership contributions from 2021 to 22 are set out on page 108, and you will see that North Northants Council contributes £24,646 towards the budget. The NSCP directly supports and aligns for the Council's corporate plan with the following mission statement: for the children and young people of Northamptonshire to be as safe as they can from harm, exploitation and neglect. And the partnership's key priorities, which are set out on page 109, contribute to NNC's delivery of its commitments, notably active, fulfilled lives, better, brighter futures and modern public services. Moving on to the report itself, you have highlighted some of the numbers, but there was 43,393 initial contacts, which is an increase of over 2,000 on the previous year. This was anticipated as the remaining pandemic restrictions were lifted, and the referrals sent into the MASH present more complex issues experienced by families and children because of the impact of lockdown, combined with a reduction in support network and services available. It has increased the pressure on the families as such that they've experienced greater levels of need. In addition to that, as a direct result of COVID-19, Northamptonshire has seen the impact of poverty, anxiety, non-school attendance, poor child and adult mental health, loss and bereavement that have contributed to an increase in the number of families requiring support due to a complexity of needs. The impact of the rising cost of living is also exacerbated the needs of families. Early help is a collaborative, not a service, and in its simplest terms, everyone is involved in the delivery of early help. This includes families, communities, voluntary groups, universal provisions, schools, health and targeted support, and this has been a priority for the NSCP this year. The impact of neglect in the lives of Northamptonshire children is not underestimated, and neglect continues to be the main abuse category in child protection plans and also the highest category for children who come into care. Following the successful rollout of the Graded Care Profile 1 toolkit, and in order to support practitioners in identifying and addressing neglect, a partnership decision was made to invest in the NSPCC's Graded Care Profile 2 toolkit, and a suite of training will be undertaken this year to support practitioners to use the tool appropriately and effectively. The new Early Help Partnership Board will build on the strong transformation work in early help. Early help is a responsibility of all partners, and the partnership has continued to support staff to develop their knowledge, competence and confidence by facilitating relevant training and reflective learning. Safer sleeping. Public Health have undertaken a broad public face a safer sleeping campaign through social media. Hits to this site around the articles published have been in the tens of thousands, which showed that many people now have a knowledge of this area, and the message is reaching far and wide. Northamptonshire's Children's Trust has introduced an expectation through local guidance and recording processes that all families of all babies under 12 months open to children's services receive safer sleeping messages as part of normal practice, echoing and reinforcing the practices of health colleagues during pregnancy and early months of a child's life. During this reporting period, sadly, one child death has been attributed to unsafe sleeping. Priority 2 is to support children, young people and families at risk of exploitation. Safeguarding Partners have been working in partnership with the University of Bedfordshire, Research in Practice and the Children's Society to support and further develop a local partnership strategy to tackle child exploitation. Positive progress includes finalising the child exploitation strategy with a county-wide partnership approach to prevention and early intervention, and includes the local authority's Community Safety Partnership Board. In addition, a countrywide definition for child exploitation has been adopted, and this has been driven forward by the Partners Child Exploitation subgroup. A partnership missing forum has been created and considers at-risk children who go missing, and the Younger People's Service offers preventative support in this area. And priority 3 is to work effectively as a partnership and to support our staff. Safeguarding Partners have had the response to an increase in children, young people and families fleeing conflict. unaccompanied asylum-seeking children from Afghanistan, as well as families fleeing conflict from Ukraine who have located in Northamptonshire, have been supported with increased partnership collaboration to ensure they feel safe and settled. The beginning of 2022 saw schools under immense pressure, working tirelessly to keep schools open despite surging numbers of COVID-19 cases amongst both students and staff. The electively home-educated population saw an increase at the beginning of this reporting period by 26 to 874 children in April 2021. This is the highest number that's been recorded. This was the third month to show consecutive record volumes. April registered the 6th successive increase, while the last 3 months have each posted consecutive records. By the end of April, there were 87 more electively home-educated children than there were 1 year ago. This is predominantly down to the pandemic. The number of children missing from education during the reported period decreased by 21 to 253 children at the end of April, marking the lowest volume in the current academic year. The latest cohort comprises 150 children fewer than the peak of 403 in October and 11 children fewer than this time last year. An average of 263 children were missing between February and June 2021. By comparison, an average of 283 children were missing in the last 3 months. The recommendations are set out on page 106, and I do recommend this report.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edwards. Members, do we have any comments in relation to this report? No, I'll just welcome the report myself, and it just shows some of the hard work that's been done through the partnership there, so congratulations to your team and officers for that. So the report has been moved by Councillor Edwards. Can I have a seconder to the report, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. The recommendations are on page 106 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Fantastic, thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, the North Northamptonshire Local Nature Recovery Strategy, and I would like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to come and address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. Right. What we are doing this, we are looking at this report 6 months after West Northants. They approved a proposal to for the county council to arrange this strategy themselves in July. But the difference of our report is that we're asking to delegate, you are asked to delegate authority to the executive member for climate and the green environment. Now that comes at a time that all the remaining EAPs have been cancelled until the new body starts in a few months. Now I just wonder what accountability is there, how will councillors be informed about the local nature recovery strategy? How will we know about the timeline? Because we need to, it says in the report that we need to recruit new members of staff to help us with that in point 4, point 7, new staffing. And I appreciate that, but it's just, can we remain informed, please? And in what manner will that happen, since it will not return to this executive if the executive member is asking for delegated authority? Will it go to full council? How will members know about this nature, and how will they be able to have an input in the local nature recovery strategy? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. Just for the record, EAPs haven't been cancelled. Some have been moved around for new dates, and some are being moved to bi-monthly because of the requirement to look at them as and when. But we will come back to you with a complete answer to all your questions, and I'm sure Councillor Pentland will have some answers to that as well. Okay, and without further ado, I invite Councillor Pentland to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lee, for your questions. Obviously important to understand where councillors can feed into this, because it is very important that they do. we're bringing it forward now. We've been waiting for some more guidance from the government in relation to this in order that we can really get cracking. But officers have been working on it over recent months to make sure we're in a good place to start moving forward now. So in respect to the EAPs, as Councillor Smithers says, they're just being rejigged slightly. The dates will be coming forward for those. The previous Climate Change, Environment and Growth EAP has been consulted and presented to on a few occasions in relation to the local nature recovery strategy, and that will absolutely continue going forward. There will also be opportunities for councillors to be involved with the development of this through the various working groups, consultation, etc. And that will develop out as we really get our teeth into this. But clearly the input from councillors will be important because you know your areas, understand the different environments and habitats within those. So having that input alongside the broad range of other organisations that will be feeding in will be really important. So a key aim of this strategy is to be really broad ranging in the work that it does, so that it involves as many people as possible, whereas perhaps previous strategies have not quite done that in the right way. So it gives us a fresh opportunity to make it broad ranging. So I hope that helps with those bits. So moving on to look at the report more specifically, it's obviously a very important paper coming forward in terms of our ongoing commitment to looking after the environment locally. And the local nature recovery strategies have come forward as part of the provision of the Environment Act 2021 and part of the government's 25-year strategy on the environment, which really seeks to leave the environment in a better state than it is currently. Unfortunately, habitats have declined, as the report details. So the LNRS, which is the kind of acronym for it, so we don't have to say all the words at once, seeks for nature recovery by taking a strategic approach to this. Locally, the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, DEFRA, has agreed for North Northamptonshire Council and West Northamptonshire Council to develop 2 local nature recovery strategies. This was on the basis of ensuring that we're looking at the areas in terms of the differences that there are environmentally and strategically, and tying that in with the stipulations in the Environment Act to make sure that this strategy really works for the local area. So the development of NNC's local LNRS, I'll go for that instead, will be done in collaboration with a number of organisations and stakeholders, including councillors, as I've mentioned. And the appendix details some of the broad-ranging organisations that will be involved with that, which is really important to ensure that we've got the expertise feeding into this. So looking to the recommendations, the executive is asked to accept the appointment of this council as the responsible authority for the LNRS for North Northamptonshire, to adopt the governance model as set out in Appendix A, and to delegate authority to the executive member to lead on this piece of work. Subject to accepting the recommendations, the council will receive funding for the preparatory work. Work has been ongoing, but this really allows us to get stuck into it. And the general principles of the LNRS can be seen in other work locally that has previously gone on, such as the Local Nature Partnership, so it gives us an opportunity to really build on that. There are a number of important points that the report touches on in respect of why this strategy will be important, particularly with biodiversity net gain, around planning applications, etc., and that will be an important part of this as well. And just one other point to make, the paper and associated documents were presented to the Climate Change, Environment and Growth Executive Advisory Panel last month and were positively received, and as I've said, they'll be involved with that moving forward. So happy to take any questions or comments from colleagues before the recommendations.
Well done, Councillor Penton. Thank you very much for bringing that to us today. Members, is there any comments? Councillor Howe?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Pentland. I welcome this report, obviously. I think this is it's a really positive way forward for us. I'd also like to say that I'm really delighted that the list of stakeholders, and I'm sure that that's not a final list, that will continue to grow as this is developed, includes the likes of the Nen Rivers Trust and the Wildlife Trust and all of those, because actually they are already members of, so for instance, our Greenway Board and our Destination Nen Valley Board. So everything that my area will cover as well, that they're involved with, will feed back. So when we're looking at developing the Greenway and all those sort of things, all of that information we will be able to use to help us to look at the biodiversity as we're moving forward. So I think this is really, really useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. I believe Councillor Howes had his hand up. Oh, sorry, you shouldn't go to an auction. You're a little twitchy over there, sorry. Councillor Brackenbury.
Thank you, Chair. In fact, I was going to say at one point you can't scratch your nose without an evidence base, but Councillor Howes just demonstrated that you actually can. No, thank you very much, Councillor Pentland, and again, I welcome this report. I welcome it because we are, in fact, going to have to do a lot of work on evidencing and obtaining the biodiversity net gain, which is going to be a central planning condition for all applications after 2023, which is, of course, this year. So this is going to be a very important piece of work. I also, as Councillor Howell just pointed out, very much welcome the multi-agency governance and partnership structure in the appendix. I just note that the Eyes Valley Trust, or Eyes Valley body, might be wise to stick in on this as another stakeholder, because they've got a strategic plan as well. But other than that, great. I welcome the evidence group because of the point about having an evidence base for everything we do, because that's extremely important in planning policy terms, and this will have a cross-cutting effect on planning policy and development going forward. So it's a very good report. I think it's an excellent sort of another example of cross-agency working, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Brackenbury. So back to you, Councillor Pentland, just to wrap up there.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for those comments. I think the key point I'd make in summarising those, that this gives us the structure for moving forward with this, but the important part of it, and I think what's really key to the idea behind this, is being responsive and adapting to the local area that we have and the stakeholders, and bringing those in at the right points as well. So thank you. So on that basis, I'd like to recommend the recommendations for approval as set out in section 3 of the report.
That's fantastic. So they have been moved. Can I look for a seconder, please? Councillor Howes, thank you. So the recommendations are on page 138 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Please have a show of hands in favour, please.
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 9, procurement of a contract for the treatment of collected kitchen food waste. So I'd like to invite Councillor Lorman to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Before I start, there's a couple of small errors in the report. In paragraph 5.2, the second instance of Corby should read Kettering, and in 7.2.1, the instance of Corby should be the same, read Kettering. This is another in the suite of papers to harmonise disposal of waste in the North Northants area, and this seeks to agree to start a procurement exercise for kitchen food waste, curbside collection, and conclude the contract. Currently, we collect this in the former East Northants and Corby areas, and we're looking to procure a new 4-year contract that will enable us to continue this, as well as extend it to the former Wellingborough and Kettering areas. It's not possible to extend or modify the existing contract, nor wise to have us without a formal disposal process for waste that we are statutorily required to collect. We expect to be required to collect weekly food waste separately after the introduction of the Environment Act 2021 or by DEFRA regulations following from that. The Council is seeking treatment by anaerobic digestion, detailed in paragraph 5.5. So I commend the report and the recommendations in 3.1 to Executive.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. Members, have you got anything to comment in relation to this report? Councillor Harrison.
Only to say that I really welcome this report. Having originally come from the East Northants area and been very used to disposing of food waste separately, I found it quite disturbing having to mix it with my other waste when I moved into the Wellingborough area. So I'm really pleased that we're going to be separating it out across the whole of North Northamptonshire. Thank you.
Councillor Pentland.
Thank you, Chair. Again, welcome this coming forward. Councillor Norman referenced the Environment Act 2021 again in that, and obviously this forms another important part of trying to look after the environment and climate through acts such as this in our homes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lorman, would you like just to wrap that up? And
I try not to have any food waste, as you can see.
well, I wasn't going to mention that because look at me as well, Mr. Councillor Lorman.
But no, I recommend the report.
Thank you very much. Okay, rightio. All right, so can I look for a seconder on that, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. They've been moved and seconded. The recommendations are set on page 150 of the agenda pack. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 10, procurement of shared parts and material suppliers for housing stock. And I would like to invite Councillor Buckingham to address the meeting, please.
Good morning again. And you'll be pleased to note that we wanted to welcome this report being brought to the Executive and the progress that's being made in this area. We just wanted to say, well done. You know, and reviewing the gas, putting in as the new boilers by the DLO. Well done. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Councillor Buckingham. It's very nice of you to acknowledge the hard work that's been done by the team. So I'd go to Councillor Binley now to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to echo your comments. Thank you, Councillor Buckingham, for your input. So the purpose of this report is to seek approval for 3 amendments on the spend levels for the supplier contracts to go through the procurement process for the shared parts and materials currently underway for heating and plumbing, windows and doors and the kitchen elements. This is due to the Procurement Gateway Group recommendation and the Housing Property Services Team review of the anticipated spend in those areas, with a view to future-proof the service. As we're all aware, since December 2021, there has been significant change in the global economic landscape. This has also played a very minor part in this request. And these 3 areas formed part of a report that was actually brought before the Executive previously back in December 2021, which is as per Appendix A. The reason this procurement exercise is currently being undertaken is to allow the Council to purchase large quantities of stock on a regular basis that are required to complete repairs and maintenance. This process allows the Council to harmonise a standardised approach for its contracts and parts procured across the Kettering and Corby NNC housing stock areas. This is also a key part of the Corby stores process. This affords the Council greater buying power and a standardised approach which brings with it efficiencies, along with better value for money for the Council overall. Sections 5.1 through to 5.5 explain in much greater detail the process that has been followed to date that has led to this request. Both capital and revenue budgets are being utilised to purchase these parts and materials, and this is explained in 5.3 to 5.5 as to why this has actually been requested. 7.1.1 gives the full breakdown of the previously agreed budget and the new proposed increased spend. It amounts to a total increase of £864,000. The tables in 7.1.4 break down the proposed spend even further, just breaking it down by capital and revenue and showing it by neighbourhood account. It must be noted we are not tied in to spend the money or use the parts and materials, but it is to ensure that we have the required contract spend levels to be able to purchase parts and materials. The anticipated spends outlined fit with existing and previous year's budgets within the HRA, which is of course a ring-fenced account. So, Chair, I would like to move the recommendations made out in section 3.1, however, with an amendment in that it is recommended, sorry, Chair, I'll read the full bit out so that we know where the amendment is. So it is recommended that the Executive approves the amended financial contract values in this report and delegates authority to the Executive Member for Housing, Communities and Levelling Up in consultation with the Executive Director for Adults, Housing and Health Partnerships to negotiate, award and enter into contracts to provide plumbing and heating, windows and doors and kitchen parts and materials to council-owned housing properties. And the reason for these recommendations are laid out in 3.2.
Through you, Chair, are we able just to keep the recommendation as it is, but then just note the updated proposed changes within the report?
I have no objection. It was just on review of the recommendation. It was just pretty much a repeat of last time and didn't recommend the actual amended contract value. So, of course, as a monitoring officer, if you're happy to not have that in there, then of course we're happy.
I think that's fine with the addition of note the updated changes within the report. That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Billy, thank you very much from this. I would like to ask members if they have any comments in relation to this report. No? Okay. So the report has been moved by Councillor Binley with the note the updated charges within that report. So you obviously will be noting the updated charges within the report. Can I look for a seconder for that, please? Councillor Harrison, thank you very much. So that's been moved and seconded. The recommendations are on page 164 of the agenda pack. And can I have a show of hands in favour, please?
Unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. So we move on to item 11, budget forecast of 22-23 as of period 8. And I'd like to invite Councillor Anne Lee to address the meeting, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's a nice, clear report, very transparent with the figures, so thank you for that. We have that at every meeting. It says, it's something we are all aware of, the Council will seek further efficiencies in year to offset the forecast overspend. But bearing that in mind, on page 200, we see in the 4th point, under environment, planning, transport management and climate, an underspend of £107,000. So I have engaged with Councillor Graham Lawman, who's been very cooperative in that respect, because there is one intended spend that is important to Kettering and which I want to safeguard for the future. I really would like a commitment for that to happen, and that is for a camera to be installed in Newland Street, where lots of cars enter when they're not allowed to. It's something that was promised in the past, but that still hasn't happened. And I just want to make sure that going forward, we are not clawing back that underspend if it can be set aside for that camera. It's something that's very important to Kettering residents. So that's something that I'd like, by mentioning it here, even though Graham Lawman, as already Councillor Lawman has very kindly explained that this is the intention, I would like, by speaking on it here, that it's placed on records that Kettering can have that camera in Newland Street. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lee. So I go to Councillor Bunday to introduce the report, please.
Thank you, Chair. What I would say with regard to Councillor Lee's comments, the £100,000 underspend, excuse me, is basically to do with flood mitigation and will remain there because basically at the moment we are very fortunate that we haven't had as many floods as we've had in the past, but that's what that money is there for, and that money should be held onto for that particular purpose. As far as Newland Street goes, you must be very, very aware that it's close to my heart as well. It's something that is a point of consultation at the moment and something that hopefully will be done in the future. But with all due respect, I think the two items should be kept totally separate and not actually the two things confused with each other. Moving on to the report, Chair, the purpose of this report is to set out the forecast revenue budget outturn position for 22-23 for the General Fund and the Housing Revenue Account. And this is the monitoring report that sets out the material financial issues identified since the budget was set last February and is based on the income and expenditure as at the end of November 2022, which is period 8. The forecast for the General Fund is an overspend of some £5.752 million against a net budget of £300.075 million. This is a favourable movement from the last report that I reported in December of some £424,000 and shows an improvement from some £6.176 million in the forecast as at period 7, and this can be seen summarised in the table at paragraph 4.3. The main changes between period 7 and period 8 is the number of vacant posts within children's services, which has been filled by agency staff to enable continuity of service, and this is forecast to result in a net pressure of £321,000, which is a movement of £196,000 from period 7. Adult services, the forecast of period 8 is a break-even position, which is a favourable movement from period 7 of £260,000. The forecast is based on the savings detailed in paragraph 5.27 on the report being achieved in year. These savings will continue to be tracked and any variances will be reported in future months. Waste management savings have an increase of 281 from period 7 to £740,000 in period 8. The remainder of the Council's contingency budget was released in period 7 to help offset the in-year overspend position. The Council has also got reserves available to call on for any balance remaining. However, it will look to achieve further in-year mitigations in the first instance. The Housing Revenue Account has a forecast overspend of £281,000 and against an approved budget of £36.27 million. The HRA has been affected by a number of factors, but the main pressure is due to the application of the agreed pay awards being higher than budgeted. The details of the movement against budget are set out in the report. Like many councils, the main issues, risks and unknowns that we continue to face are around inflationary pressures and the change within demand-led services. And I'd like to remind members that the base rate that the Bank of England set in December went up by 0.5% to 3.5%, and there is a fear that this year will go up at middle of the year to about 4.5%. And it's also worth noting that inflationary pressures have moved down slightly, but it is very slightly. November's inflation was 2.7% against 11.1% in the previous month. That's the CPI, and RPI figures are 14% in November as opposed to 14.2% in October. With that, Chair, I'm happy to propose the recommendations of paragraph 3.
Thank you, Councillor Bunday. Members, do you have any comments in regards to the report you just heard about? No? Sorry, Councillor Lorman.
Thank you. Just to answer Councillor Lee, and I've written it at some length to her about the Newland Street. It is something officers are progressing at our request, but it is in the queue behind George Street and Corby, which is further advanced, and we have a new enforcement officer taking over in the near future, and that will be one of the roles that he will push forward. I just wanted to say that I think the narrative on highways and waste is very good. It explains it fully, but I just wanted to cover the home-to-school transport situation and some of the factors there. We've now taken this over at the last half-term, and a new manager is in place, and we are focusing on the details and some efficiencies there. But, of course, many of the contracts were let for September and for the whole academic year, so we can't necessarily have too much influence, and there are many more children with SEND needs these days, and also many more out of area, as the report says. But this is being addressed, and we've been fortunate to be able to engage in some consultancy work in partnership with local partnerships after the West Northants audit report, and they'll be looking at a number of areas to support us in this area to see if we can somehow reduce the overspends.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Lorman. Just looking around the room. Okay, fantastic. So the report has been proposed by Councillor Bunday. Can I look for a seconder to the report, please? Councillor Brackenbury, thank you very much. The recommendations are set out on page 184 of the agenda pack. They've been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands in favour, please? Okay, thank you very much. So no urgent items of business have been received. So that concludes the business on this agenda, and I thank those members, officers and members of the public who have been viewing this online for their time, and I declare the meeting closed. Thank you.